welcome back to Feedback Loop. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joey.
And this week, we are talking about an album that I picked last week, which is called Life Screams by Lacey Sturm, who formerly, I guess, Lacey Mosley at the time of Flyleaf happening. But yeah, it's the lead singer for Flyleaf. She left the band in like 2012-ish, I think, and then released this in 2016-ish, I think. 2015 maybe. I don't know. It's her first solo album. I'm a fan of her as a singer. So that's why I picked it. I like this album because I like her. I like her voice. that's all it takes for me to like an album.
Yeah.
It's just some good vocals. So
Well,
that's
go.
why we did that. You have listened to Flyleaf previously, right?
I have heard Flyleaf's like radio hits, right. I guess.
Which is mostly their first album, and then some other songs from their other albums.
Yeah, I think whatever their first album was, the first big one, I only heard the radio hits, and then I think I heard a couple of songs off Memento Mori, but wouldn't remember them. I wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup, I guess. Yeah,
I think I'm kind of in the same place, except I really like their first album. I listen to their first album fairly often, and I think it's pretty solid all the way through. But yeah, that's our experience. I don't think we have anything. I feel like we're gonna fly through this. I feel like it's gonna be impossible for us to take longer than an hour. But of course, now that I've said that, it's gonna take more than an hour.
Not if we go ahead and crack into track 1. Impossible.
Hell yeah!
Excellent segue.
Rocking it out. What did you think, Joey? What was your first exposure to this like?
Okay, Jeremy. So we're starting off here. I 100% agree with you that I like her voice.
Yeah.
I'll put that there. The music is fine, and but I'm gonna go ahead and like, I guess, skip not necessarily to talking about the lyrics, but a general something that I guess we've talked about. Okay.
There's no rules here.
Something that I think we've talked about on the podcast is that I have a general distaste for religious type, like Christian rock. And
that's what this is.
That's what this is. And
yeah,
not to like knock Lacey Sturm. I read her story of how she found her faith, and like it's totally awesome for her. And it's great that her life has taken the turn that it did once she made that discovery about herself. But I can't shake the feeling that that I get, the innate feeling that I get from listening to Christian rock. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that out there.
I think this is partially why I picked this album as well, is because I knew it would be at least something out of the ordinary for our episodes. It would be something more to it than just the music, I suppose, and that's the kind of the context in which we listen to it, because like you said, we have talked about it before, and I knew that you have this kind of distaste. And generally, I think I agree with you. I think it's a big turn off knowing that a band is Christian, or knowing that they make Christian songs, I suppose, more so than knowing, because I mean, I guess half of Korn, maybe some of Korn, some members of Korn are devout Christians now. Granted, I haven't really listened to a lot of their music since that happened, but I can listen to Korn and not have that kind of distaste. I can also listen to this album and not have that. Same for Flyleaf's first album. Technically, they're Christian rock at that point, even though I'd really like that album. So I think it's interesting that like it's so deeply seated in your musical taste that like Christian rock kind of, I don't want to speak for you and say that you just like write it off, but it has that kind of impact on you. I mean, it's like repelled by it.
To an extent, it kind of is, and I want to get past that. And there's definitely songs on this album that I don't have that feeling about. Like there's songs on here that I don't get that feeling. I don't know how to describe it necessarily. Yeah. It's just like a feeling within me that whenever I listen to it, I'm just like, like this is too harsh of a word, and it's gonna sound meaner than I intend it to, but
No,
it's
this is the first album that that you hate, or
but
at least dislike
but
publicly on this podcast.
it gives me like a gross feeling internally. But
Interesting.
but that's something that like I will 100% admit my bias here. Like that is that
Hey,
is
I mean, I'm full of biases. I call your album shit all the time. It's totally fine.
oh my god.
I'm not defending this album. I do think this album. I do still enjoy this album. I think really analyzing it on the level that I do for Feedback Loop has maybe lessened my love for this album. I still really like her voice, and like you kind of said, there are still some songs on here that stand out to me. But yeah, I can totally understand the criticism. But I guess getting it into the usual Feedback Loop process here, Impossible. It starts off with some like lovely, floaty, angelic kind of vocal riffing over some clean guitar, and then it rises pretty quickly when the lyrics come in the verse. And there's something that I think immediately hooked me with this album is that Lacey screams,
Yeah.
which is something that fans of Flyleaf's first album might be a bit happy to hear, I suppose, or really it's a point of contention, I think, in the fan base that Lacey stopped screaming after their first album, and so their second and third and maybe fourth, I don't remember how many albums they have, but their successive albums there was less and less screaming, and people weren't as into it because it kind of became more radio rock, I
Yeah.
suppose, or radio friendly rock at the very least. So immediately me coming into this back when I first heard this, hearing Lacey, I've always liked Lacey's voice. That's not going to change. I listen to her in pretty much everything I can. But hearing her scream again was just like an instant, like, yes, she's back kind of moment for me. Even though, like, I'm not religious, and I don't necessarily, I don't have the extent of hatred towards Christian rock that Joey does, but it's still there's definitely something there to it that just feels icky to some degree. But yeah, musically, a lot of this album is just kind of like it's good old radio hard rock kind
Yeah.
of stuff. It's kind of cheesy at points where there's not a lot of like creative structure or instrumentation and stuff. So I definitely think that me coming back and listening to it so intently has kind of sullied my previous image of this album. And because again, normally when I listen to albums and music, I'm not really like analyzing it,
Yeah.
at least to this extent. So I've changed a little bit, but yeah, it's got some cheesy riffs and it's radio rock.
Well, that is unfortunate to hear that happened to you. I will like her
Oh, I
voice.
mean, I'm still gonna be able to listen to this
Oh,
album.
okay.
It's not changing that.
Well, there we go. Her voice is, I'd say, the most unique and best part of this album. Which I mean, it's her solo album, so like
Right.
it's she's showing up. I think she screams really well. Like
Yeah.
it
She has
works
an
really well.
interesting like rough kind of grating kind of vocal quality to her, but she also sings some very like clean stuff as
Hmm.
well. So it's kind of it's nice to kind of hear her range on that kind of thing.
Yeah. Lyrically, as I kind of alluded to, the song is called "Impossible," and like I knew what to expect coming into this because
Yeah.
I knew Flyleaf was a Christian rock band, and I tried to leave that out of some analysis. But as far as lyrics go on this song, it's if you know that they're Christian rock, you can pretty easily tell that this is related to her religion and
Right.
like the it like I don't the chorus is every morning I see another miracle I can't believe I'm living the impossible, which I took as referencing how just I don't want to sound condescending whenever I say like from a religious person's perspective or like whatever. Like I
Hmm.
don't think that the very act of life is amazing, but like to them, they believe like, oh, it's this impossible thing that God created such perfect beings as humans, or what like created life or something, and that's kind of where I get from it. Like she's describing the very like the very act of like having been created as like this triumphant great thing that she's just like, whoa, every day is a gift because I was made by this great creator type deal.
Yeah.
And that's
So I'm going to disagree with you.
oh
And I think that this is why I think this is going to be an interesting episode, is because not necessarily trying to psychoanalyze you, but I'm curious to how much, not that there isn't already a religious context to this album, there definitely is, but I'm curious to see how far into that you read and kind of project maybe a little
yeah,
bit onto it, because there's definitely a surface level here where, like you said, I mean, every morning I see another miracle. I can't believe I'm living the impossible. We are the sign, we are the wonder, another day of living the impossible, or whatever. And to me, thinking, I think, just to get this out of the way, I think the lyrics in this song specifically are kind of generic and boring.
yeah,
But I think if you took this out of a religious rock context and put it anywhere else, there's this kind of aspect where, okay, well, she's just being proud of her accomplishments as a musician. She's living the life of a musician, a professional musician who gets to play music for a living. And that is what she is considering impossible, not necessarily the fact that she is alive, kind of a thing.
yeah. See,
However,
mhm.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I ended up after like I had said I looked into kind of her background and everything, and another angle that I tried to take this album from was like she's talking about it being living the impossible as having made it through her early life
Yeah,
and come out on the other side, because it sounds like she just had an extremely rough upbringing, and to have the kind of success that she has had after that could be another interpretation of living the impossible.
yeah, and I think that's probably valid. To be completely honest, I have not looked into her backstory or anything. You've done more research on her as a person and her context than I do, so you have, I would say, a more valid understanding of her perspective, perhaps, on things. But yeah, I don't know. This song's kind of generic. Otherwise, to me, it's like it's just like this generic kind of prevailing, despite how impossible some tasks might be. And I feel like you can kind of plug yourself into a lot of these. Each verse is kind of like talking about a different angle of struggle and how they're becoming more than that. It's kind of weird because the third verse always stood out to me. She says, "I choose to be alive, especially because the odds say I should die. I wrestle death again, and I know more of his moves now, and I won't give in." So that kind of, like, to me at least, brings in the suicidal aspect of it,
Yeah,
where she's like, she's familiar with, I mean, she's personifying death and saying that death is her struggle, at least in this verse, even though it's not necessarily in the other verses. But it's, I don't know, it's kind of a darker context than, and I guess it's not necessarily darker than Flyleaf, because Flyleaf, at least on their first album, handled some pretty heavy shit for, especially for a Christian rock band. But like, even coming into this, I guess with the music and everything else, I don't know, this verse always kind of catches me off guard because it's so much darker than I expect it to be for some reason.
yeah. I mean, think like the context of suicidal thoughts or wrestling with death definitely. I mean, it sounds like whenever she first found her faith, she was in that
Yeah,
place anyways, which would make sense if that's the subject matter. It definitely sounds like she is quite a soldier for getting through what she got through.
yeah, she's the soldier leading the charge right onto track number 2 of the soldier.
Not to use a segue to diminish anything that she's gone through, but I had to make the segue there. I mean, it has to be
I don't think
what,
that was diminutive. I think
okay.
we're good.
Okay, cool.
I think people knew what was happening.
Okay,
People
cool.
can't tell it when we're segueing by now. Then I don't know what to tell them. I
Then
guess
then they haven't soldiered through enough of our episodes yet, I guess.
exactly. This one's it's a bit kind of like slower, and not really slower, I suppose. It's kind of like got this groove to it with the bass. There's almost this odd time signature deal going on with it, I think, but it kind of goes back to kind of a standard 4/4 in the chorus. But yeah, it's a song. This
It's
this album's kind of, I mean, honestly, like, musically, it's just generic radio hard rock stuff for the most
yeah.
part.
This one, it was different enough from the first song that
Mhm.
it started out in a better place for me, which, I mean, a
Yeah,
slower song, a decently cool drum beat, and whenever the acoustic guitar comes in, it gets a better feel about it. Like, it was something at least a little bit more unique than I felt like the music on Impossible was. So that, and I feel like her voice it complemented the music, I guess, complemented her voice better with the way she was singing on this one.
Yeah.
Whereas the first one, I felt like her voice was just leagues better than the music, I guess.
Yeah.
And this song kind of went more hand in hand, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. It does change things up a little, but it's nothing that is out of the range of at least what I would expect from this
Yeah.
kind of music. Lyrically, this one was kind of again. I'm curious. I actually want you to go first on all of the lyrics now,
Okay.
just to see like how drastically different. I don't want to influence your. I don't want you to pull back from your Christian projection onto these lyrics.
See, I was specifically trying to go into this not
Right.
necessarily relating everything to a Christian connotation, because I don't know. I feel like that's a point that I need to work at, in the same way that at a point in my life I had to work at actually giving like female singers a chance.
Yeah.
And this one, I felt like it was easier to separate from a religious connotation, because it really could just, it's mainly about standing up to people and not giving in on what you believe, which,
Hmm.
I mean, to her point, not to necessarily bring it right back to Christianity or religion in general, but in the space that she's in, I mean, I know there's a big Christian rock fan base out there,
Yeah.
but the general radio hard rock, especially of the time that like Flyleaf was out and stuff, religion wasn't like super cool or anything. It's not like
Yeah.
you're, I don't, when it comes to rock, it's Christianity or just religion in general has never really been a cool thing. And I can imagine she felt pressure from other people to, I don't know, not put it in her music. And not necessarily that this is the only thing that the song is about. It's really about standing up for what you believe in. But
Hmm.
this one, it could literally be about her standing up for what her actual faith, I guess, in this situation.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's also probably some pressure from the other side too. I would imagine, being a Christian rock artist, especially on the caliber of Flyleaf and stuff, where there's a lot of screaming, there's a lot of heavier stuff going on in the music. That there were probably friends and family of her that were Christian saying like, no, you don't need to be doing that kind of music. You can make more pleasant music to praise Jesus or whatever that is their intention is. I don't mean to be dismissive.
Praise Jesus.
Yeah, but like, I mean, the idea of Christian rock and Christian hard rock is kind of an interesting perspective in itself, because I think historically rock and roll has been the devil's music,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like she was probably getting pressured from both sides. There were people in the rock community being like, "No, you don't need to sing about your religion," and then people from her religious upbringing being like, "No, you don't need to do rock and music. You need to do praise worship music or whatever."
Yeah, that's got to be a fine line to walk. Um, and I honestly think part of that is why maybe I get that taste in my mouth whenever I listen to it. And not that it's necessarily disingenuous, but that it feels I'm not really talking about her specifically, but part of
Yeah,
it almost feels try hardy in the
yeah,
way that's like, we're gonna kick ass in the name of the Lord, like type
yeah,
deal.
yeah. It
Which,
it feels like a parent trying to like be hip, right?
yeah, somebody's walking up to you like it's like the counselor that sits in the chair backwards and flips their
Yeah,
cap
yeah,
around,
yeah, yeah.
and it's like, I'm gonna rap with you guys. But it can work. It can definitely work. And there are points on this album where I don't get that feeling. So, and not to only rail on Christianity, there's some people that take like the Satanism devil worship
Oh, for
shit
sure.
way too fucking far, where you're like, come on, dude, like this is so cheesy. But
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I think, yeah, it's really just the extremes of lyrical content
yeah,
that stand out, and whether that's religious or not. I mean, there are bands that go extreme in a different direction that's not religious, and it's still like over the top. And you're like, okay, calm down, dude. It's gonna be okay.
yeah. Like
Especially in metal, I feel like a lot of heavier death metal and stuff, especially that gets radio play, is not great.
Yeah, I mean, like there's like Cannibal Corpse, which is
Yeah.
fine and funny and stuff, but then there's like people like what was the band Anal Cunt, where you're like, okay, dude, like I'm not laughing. This is over the top.
Yeah, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
You've passed that right into the next track, which is track number 3. I'm not laughing.
Ha ha!
Wait, we're not supposed to laugh.
Oh shit!
I'm not laughing.
Ha ha!
This one does start with some laughing samples though, and it's kind of like scattered and layered in such a way to like evoke like this internal kind of laughing, where like you would see it in a movie where somebody enters a room in some dream or whatever, and everyone turns and starts laughing at them, and everyone's like laughing in their mind, kind of a thing, and it's kind of dissonant, which is cool. It's fun. It's kind of cheesy. Whatever. This song though, I don't know if you've listened to a lot of their music. This one reminds me of The Pretty Reckless. It's very much in that kind of area for me, even though I think Lacey handles her vocals better than Taylor Momsen. No offense to Taylor Momsen, but
so okay, I probably have heard some of their songs, because like the bass, the part where like at first where it's just the bass and the drums come in and it's got like this almost punky feel to it, I was like, it sounds familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And maybe that's what I was getting there, because it sounded, I associated it with like emo punk rock type feel, but
yeah,
maybe I don't know. I feel like I slap emo on stuff so often, or I just don't even know where it's at. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't part of the scene necessarily. Man. Yeah.
Whatever happens. There's also a really cool guitar solo in this one that stood out to me. I like it's got this kind of like sloppy live stage feel to the tone and the reverb to it that I don't know, it sets this track out.
Yeah, because there were slight guitar solos on, I think there was one on Impossible that didn't stand out at all, and then this one, it was like, okay, I get what you're doing now. This is fine. This is fine by me. This is cool.
Yeah. Lyrically, this one to me it felt, it's kind of continuing the idea of the soldier, of this like character that seems to maybe be afraid to speak up for themselves, which it kind of looking back, it seemed like maybe in the soldier, Lacey is pep talking somebody else to stand up for themselves and what they believe in, and in this it kind of starts to seep in that maybe it's within the context of like a verbally abusive relationship, where it seems like Lacey is trying to stick up for the character that won't defend themselves in this scenario where she's not laughing. She's kind of like calling out the dude that is maybe abusing her friend and be like, no, like this isn't cool. This isn't funny anymore.
Yeah, this one I was able to separate entirely from religion, where I just thought it was about either, like you said, somebody in an abusive relationship, or just in general, like bullies, just abusive, verbally, emotionally abusive people. And it takes a stance of, it doesn't really like advocate fighting back physically or anything at any point in the song. Like a lot of hard rock songs about like standing up to abusers or bullies tend to take this line of like, oh yeah, well then I kicked their ass type deal. Yeah. And this one is more just in the line of saying like, look, I know the reason you're doing this, it's because you don't feel good about yourself, but no one is actually on your side. No one wants to be like you. No one wants to follow you in this. You're not a person that other people will be looking up to for doing things like this. Like, yeah, it takes a more like how shit actually goes down stance on it, where she's just like, you're just being a shitty person, and one day you're gonna realize it, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting. I mean, the chorus again, she's saying, "I'm not laughing, don't get confused," which I think is kind of insightful in that a lot of, at least in like school settings, bullies and other people they're just out to make other people feel miserable start to do it for attention. Kind of like what you said, like there are reasons that they're doing it, and there's kind of like this aspect where they're they could be doing it to try and get a laugh out of other people, because that's how kids are. That's how people in high school are. They'll make fun of somebody and then everyone else laughs because it's fun to make fun of other people. And when someone else does it, then they don't have to worry about the guilt of it. But so it's kind of like her like snapping to reality and saying like, look, this isn't actually funny. This is not what you think it is.
Yeah.
And so it like you said, it's not outright condoning attacking them. It's just kind of like level setting me like, no, this is not what you think it is. This is not how it needs to be.
Yeah. One day you're going to get out of high school and you're just going to like, people are going to be like, oh yeah, there's that person that was just an absolute shitbag, and see ya.
Yeah. There's the bullies that are obsessed with how other people view them, and it's kind of like vain, and that they're doing it for vanity and for popularity, which is not the way to be.
And they need to listen to track number 4, Vanity. That's what they need to listen to.
Yeah, so this one's a skit more than a song, and I think this is where the album kind of picks up for me personally. I mean, I like I'm Not Laughing. It's cool. It's got a cool sound to it. I don't hate it, but it's like this domestic violence skit from her and a Christian rapper that I'd never heard of called Propaganda. No offense to him. Cheers. It was a good performance. It kind of feels like wait, did I? No, yeah, this is right. It's got some cool like distorted and like glitchy effects for the vocals while they're like shouting at each other, which is kind of fun. It really emphasizes some of the phrases and feelings and makes things stand out a little bit. But it's pretty intense, but not super intense. It kind of feels like a well done like poetry slam kind of thing.
Yeah,
going on between them.
It's definite like beat poetry, like half rap, half beat poetry, where it's just you start to lose the fact that every word is placed just so where it's supposed to be, until you catch like a line where you're like, oh, that's how this worked with that other line, and like
right,
it's works itself as a skit, but you can also tell that it is a poem as well, which I will definitely say hats off to them, because this is a pretty intense song. Like,
yeah. And it's got some cool, like, I like the guitar tone in this, and there's like the synth drone kind of thing going on. But yeah, it's pretty cool, simple skit about domestic abuse, I guess. What it sounds like Lacey's character is trying to break up with a man that feels like he has nothing to apologize for, and feels like she owes him, and she should be proud. It's kind of like upsetting reading the lyrics because of how like intense it is. And at one point he tells her that she should be proud of her bruises and wear them as like medals or something, because that's how true love is. It's not always pleasant. It can be painful. It's supposed to be painful, kind of a thing, which is fucked up.
Yeah, like it was so weird, because the whole song, I'm just like, okay, this is obviously like a manipulative relationship, abusive relationship. But then there was just, when he started talking about like the bruises on your arms ain't no badge of honor, I think, yeah, that's what he says. Or he's like asking like, oh yeah, like those bruises on your arms ain't no badge of honor, like know you're happy to wear them. And it was just, I didn't know if she was talking about like in the past before she found faith. Like that line struck with me after, I guess,
as something
knowing
that was actually said to her.
Yeah, like,
yeah,
just because I know that, I don't know, in the circles that I used to run with, it was like you neglecting yourself was like a reason to be proud. Like, oh yeah, well, I've done all these drugs, or I've done this. Like, I really don't care about myself or my health or how I look or whatever. Right. Like, it was something to prove, and that's kind of, I didn't know if she was like necessarily talking about an actual abusive ex of hers, or just the abusive life that she had lived herself in the past.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard to tell which side she's actually on. It's kind of tropey to have the man abusing the woman, but it definitely happens the other way as well. And I think it was maybe they were just more comfortable, and not that I feel like Propaganda was necessarily comfortable playing the bad guy in this,
Yeah.
because it's got to be hard for him to read a script that someone else wrote and be like, you want me to say that you actually want me to go in on this kind of a
Yeah.
thing, when it's something so intense. But yeah, it definitely happens both ways. I'm just gonna take a sidebar here. If you listening, the audience here, are experiencing any sort of domestic violence, there is a hotline out there. I know we plug the suicide hotline a lot when that comes up. I'm gonna try and plug other hotlines as they come up as well. And this week, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, at least here in America, I'm assuming it's global, but I don't know that, is 1-800-799-7233. Call that number if you're finding yourself in a situation, even if you're not sure, if you think you might be in a situation where there's this kind of like domestic abuse and violence going on, but you're afraid to say anything to anyone, give them a call, please. They'll help you get shit sorted in the least harmful way possible.
Man. And all I gotta say about that is, all you domestic abusers out there, I hope you fucking rot,
In hell.
in hell.
Yeah, like track number 5, rot.
There we go. Which, I mean, I was segueing, but yeah, like I stand by that. If
Yeah.
if you abuse people that you say you love, fuck you.
Yeah, that's the biggest mind fuck. But rot, this is one of my favorite tracks on the album, if not my favorite. There are a couple of them that I marked, but this one, it finishes off the dialogue from Vanity with that skit kind of coming out, and then Lacey's rough vocals come in with some of the nice ambient guitars building, and you're hit with this kind of like, it's punchy and it's minimal, but it still has like layers, which is kind of, I guess, contradicting itself. But there's a really cool sound to it that kind of continues the suspense until the chorus comes in, and I don't know, I like the sound of this track.
I'm trying to. Okay, sorry. I was reading the wrong section of notes, and I was like, "This can't be right. This can't be right," and it wasn't right. So I apologize.
How dare you? But yeah, it's got some fun wah on the guitars in the chorus. There's a lot of layers of vocals in the second verse that aren't really like in sync, which kind of gives this dissonant feel. That's cool. And there's some really cool backing screams as well that happen in this one.
Yeah, I feel like this is a very good song to come off the back of Vanity,
Yeah.
where it's, I don't know, it just, after a hard hitting poetry slam, this is a hard hitting song in a sea of the previous 3 actual songs being kind of like, okay, yeah, like kind of generic, like kind of what you would expect. This one breaks the mold a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's better for it. I think I like the sound of it. It's great. I'm not gonna say it's a 10 out of 10, because again, it's great for this album. It's a good song. I'm not trying to sell her accomplishments short at all. I do like this album. This one definitely stands out as better than all of them so far, at least.
Lyrically, this one, I kind of went back to the Christianity angle for it, where it seemed to me like she was talking about how the beauty that holds everything outside of God's grace is like temporary, or it will rot, and the finding your faith is forever. This song, the lyrics itself gave me a new feeling, where it wasn't necessarily gross. But it was, I don't know how to describe it, where I was like, okay.
Try to describe it. It's what we're doing on this podcast.
I tried, and the only way I could describe it was the way I felt whenever I was in about, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade, and starting to have some different thoughts, but I still had to go to church 3 to 4 times a week, and I would just be listening to things, and it was like an emptiness, I guess, whereas the other ones kind of made me feel a little icky. It didn't make me feel any sort of way. It just made me feel like I don't believe this. Like, I don't, like, just the thought that, like, the beauty that is outside of God's grace is temporary. It's not a feeling that I vibe with at all, because
Yeah.
anytime I see beauty, I'm just like, oh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah, I mean,
great.
everything we experience is outside of God, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard to justify saying that, well, everything here is just gonna rot away anyway, and it's all temporary, which I mean it is,
Yeah, it
and
totally
it's
is.
maybe a nihilistic way of looking at things. Like we are all gonna die, and all of the stuff is temporary, but that doesn't mean that like it's not worthwhile as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the feeling, that even if it is temporary and even if it is going to rot, that doesn't mean anything to me. That
Yeah.
of that's not news to me. So I'm just going to keep thinking things are beautiful and not care that they're going to rot.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, that's all we have here on the planet is what we have.
Yeah.
So you gotta suck it up and enjoy it. There's no reason to hate what you're, or there's no reason to not necessarily hate, but abstain from loving things that are temporary just because they're gonna go away. You shouldn't be so afraid of losing something that you don't try to have it, and all those other cliches like that. But yeah, this is definitely a religious song. There's no way to pull this one apart, at least in my interpretation of it. It seemed more that it was about her struggle to kind of find and keep her faith while being constantly tempted and worn down by just life in
Yeah.
general, which is kind of yeah, I guess it is kind of an icky way of looking at things, being tempted by vain things, vanity, or like uh I can't think of the word for just things, products in the world that you want to hold on to, kind of a thing. Which, yeah, it's great to convince yourself that you've let go of all material things and you've ascended to only need those. But that's for monks in monasteries that
Yeah.
have nothing going on around them as well. They're on another level. I have nothing but respect for them. To be clear, I just I feel like it does come off as a little strange from a rock star.
Yeah. From the outsider's perspective, especially, like somebody like one of us looking into her
Right.
life.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's not like that. Neither of us have experience with religion. We both were raised religiously and we left, so we have some context in that aspect. Like we understand that that's how they are told or to believe and feel, is that like nothing matters except for God before everything else. But realistically, like we are human and we have a life. I mean, I guess that's the point, is that Christians believe in a better life afterwards. But yeah, I don't know. It is, I guess, yeah, it's fair to say that we are on the outside, and it's not easy to necessarily look in and judge.
well, if you're out there and you're thinking like us, just know that you're not alone, because you're thinking like us and we're talking about it right now.
Indeed, we're also talking about track number 6. You're not alone.
Boom.
This one, it starts with like a ventilator beep kind of thing from like a hospital, and the piano comes in, and then the ventilator kind of flatlines a bit. There's got some clean guitar and some intense tom drums. That's kind of an interesting contrast under Lacey's kind of fast paced eighth note style singing on this track. But yeah, otherwise it's not a super standout track for me.
Yeah, kind of the way I described it. I mean, her voice, it stays pretty clean in here, so you get to
Yeah,
hear her star voice in that way. But because she does do a lot of screaming in other songs, so it's nice
yeah,
to have a change up there. But the song, it doesn't, musically, it doesn't really do much for me as far as like keeping my interest due
yeah.
to the music. But
Yeah, and
there's
this is
nothing
the
bad
middle of the
about it.
album. Yeah, this is the middle of the album too, so it's kind of it's a whammy of just blandness.
Sorry, Lacey.
No, I don't think she's gonna listen to this or be offended if she does.
Well, at least we can talk about the lyrics.
It's true.
Um, man, so this one, I also couldn't get out of the God space.
Yeah, I think
Where,
I'm the same.
I mean, it's called "You're Not Alone," which, on its own, okay, like it can be talk about people that you love and there's
Sure.
people around you, but in the context of a Christian rock album, you kind of, I kind of had an idea of what it was going to be going in, but it's just talking about how you're never alone because you have God. I like that's kind of just
Yeah.
where I went.
It's kind of about like finding comfort in some higher power, God in this case, who's just like watching you and kind of implying that you just have to give into it. And it's I don't know if it's this track or another track, but at some point throughout the tracks, there's this kind of implication that she makes that she's done all she can for this person and she has to take a step back, and the only person that can help whoever is in the situation that she's referring to is to find God, which is kind of damaging and harmful. I think you shouldn't like ever take a step back from someone because you feel like, oh, I've done all I can. I mean, I guess it's good to have boundaries,
Yeah.
but it, I don't know. It just kind of gave me a weird feeling of abandoning someone because you think God has under control.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go any farther other than it just seems weird that you'd be like, well, it's in God's hands now. Like,
Yeah, and
were you?
I think maybe in the context of the song having that flat line at the beginning, maybe it truly is that she's losing a loved one and that they've died. So at that point, yeah, she clearly can't control anything and she can't really be there to help the person, but God theoretically could guide them to heaven. And I think that's kind of where this album goes lyrically for the next couple tracks, at least for me, is seeing someone die and not knowing whether or not they were saved. So Lacey is kind of just from an outside perspective fearing for them and hoping
Yeah,
that they can find God in whatever afterlife travel they have to take before their final destination.
final destination. Holy shit, man.
Is that too intense of a phrase?
No, just thinking about like up in heaven, people are just fucking like dodging trains left and right. Just, oh shit!
Like the movie Final
Yeah.
Destination. I feel like if they were that good at dodging trains, they wouldn't have died and gone to heaven.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. A second in heaven feels like forever, so maybe you're
That's
not
true.
even
They've
noticing
had a
it.
lot of time to practice
Yeah,
up there. Track number 7 feels like forever. This one, I don't know if it's a guitar or if it's like a synth thing, but they have this like kind of plucky, boopy, synthy guitar thing going on in the verse that kind of sounds like sonar pings in some way, which
yeah,
is kind of interesting. There's some backing, reverby, tremolo picked guitar for some nice ambience at some points in this track that kind of stands out as well.
yeah. There's wubs here at the
Yeah.
beginning. It made me realize that wubs were like a thing. I mean,
Wubs.
remember, not realize, I guess.
You're not a fan of the Wubby Dubs?
No, I don't like it just caught me off guard. I was just like, what? What's happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is not necessarily a standout track overall, but there are some things that stand out.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll just get into lyrics because I
Yeah,
didn't
keep it
have
going.
too much. Yeah, there we go. Man, this is going to be a quick one. This
I mean,
one.
we're already 40 minutes in, so
Oh my God. Okay. So this one is, it's still about God. And
track number 7 is still about God.
oh my word. But so this one, it kind of just, I took it as at face value, which maybe means I'm dumb, but it just about like, I guess the transcendent feeling of feeling like you're in the presence of God, making it feel like time has stopped or feel like you will live eternally in heaven, or like, I don't know, what kind of fucking bonkers like headspace are people in whenever they truly believe that they're going to live forever in heaven. Like, what, it just, not saying that it's like it makes you crazy or anything, but like I couldn't imagine honestly 100% believing that whenever you die that it's stuff's going to continue. And I
Yeah.
wonder how much of an effect that would have on the way I live my life, I
I
guess.
mean,
Is
it's a fear of dying, right? It's
yeah.
something to kind of coax you into being okay with dying because there's this kind of natural fear of mortality, and that if when you die there's nothing else, that's the scariest thing in the world for a lot of people because nobody knows what it feels like to not exist, and because they won't feel anything, they won't exist. That concept is just so like impossible for the human brain to grasp, I think, and that's why religion was created, right? To kind of help people cope with death, I think, and maybe it's not even maybe, it's definitely been taken too far, at least in America. It's been commercialized and stuff like that. I'm all for people believing what they want to believe to help them get through a day and get through the life, whatever. But it's definitely that's a whole nother bucket of worms. We're not going to go into to that too much. I'm going to bring it back in. This one lyrically, it kind of seemed to me that if the last track was her witnessing a friend or a loved one dying, and she's kind of not sure what their fate is in this afterlife, kind of a thing, this one felt like she's maybe thinking about her own death and her own fate, where she's talking about when she dies. The great line that Joey decided to share in our Discord earlier. She says, "My mouth is cold, my body whole. I may explode, but you feel like forever." Which I like the melody of it. It gets stuck in my head.
Yeah.
But it feels extreme, but it feels like she's kind of thinking about like when she's died and she's not exploding, but maybe it's to like say no matter how she dies, if she dies even in the worst possible way by exploding or whatever, she's going to be more alive after, or because her afterlife is within God's domain, and that's the end goal. I don't want to say it's a goal for Christians to die and get to heaven, but that is the end point, I suppose, and that's something that they're kind of she's not necessarily. Well, I mean, I guess she's kind of necessarily looking forward to it in some way, where she's longing to feel what it's like to be in God's presence, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end, if you go out exploding, I screams, you screams, we all screams.
For
Life
Screams.
Album,
the album called Life Screams, and its titular track, number 8. Oh, this one. Okay, so this is the title track.
Oh.
Well, I mean, this is the title track, right? It's supposed to be like the big one, but for me, this felt like a very like generic. It's got this like generic pop piano foundation with some filtered toms that kind of feels like they're really trying to force an anthem, kind of a thing. Which I mean, I guess is the point of the title track, but even for like the album that we've listened to thus far, I felt like the chorus was pretty bland and typical hard rocky. The post chorus does add some kind of cool pulsing synth and some ambient guitar stuff, but it just, I don't know, it's a lackluster song in my opinion.
Yeah, this one kind of hit me in the same way that Impossible did, which they were both the singles off of this album, so maybe that's like the point, I guess. But yeah, it kind of hit me in the same way that it's like, okay, I would like if I would have turned on 93.1 in 2015 or whatever, this is what I would expect to hear, I guess. Yeah.
Lyrically, obviously in the context of this album, this is meant to be a religious song, but I feel like it doesn't have to be for this one specifically. It kind of felt to me like it's just about living your life and experiencing all aspects of being alive, which kind of contradicts what we were talking about earlier, where she was in Rot, where we kind of mentioned that she was talking about everything being fleeting and everything that is here on Earth is going to rot and it's not going to matter. This is kind of the opposite, where it seemed to me like she's just embracing being alive for the sake of witnessing everything that is around her. And part of that includes death. And so I think this is kind of tying back and kind of coping and knowing that one day she will die, but it doesn't matter because she's had the chance to live and to feel and to do things. And there's also this kind of undertone of kind of chasing your calling and kind of follow living your life the way that best suits you. And I think in that going with what you feel you have to do.
Yeah, this song, I guess if I were to put a timeline on this album, I would have expected this song to be before Feels Like Forever.
Yeah.
But it being immediately after, it does seem kind of like, okay, but in the last song you were saying almost the opposite of this song.
Yeah.
but I mean, that's like, there's no one rule for life, so you can feel completely different ways, especially when you've had a twisty and turny life, like it
Yeah, and I
sounds like
mean,
she's had.
even from day to day, it's okay to feel things differently. Granted, I don't know if you should be having these drastic changes in worldview every day, but it can happen.
Yeah, that's all part of faith,
It's true. It's all part of the Christian faith and track number 9 faith. Which
Boom.
this one, I'm interested to see if you had anything familiar pop up, because the guitar tone and the melody here, and even her vocals on this track, remind me a lot of one of the last tracks Lacey did with Flyleaf, which was called Fire, on their like third or fourth, whatever their last album was in 2012. It sounds very similar to this track.
Yeah, this one. So I half expected this to be some sort of weird cover of Faith, like the George Michael song.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, I know why.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we all know why.
Yeah.
Well, we know why. People
We
have
know
heard
why.
the album know why.
But just, I don't. I guess thinking about George Michael in general doesn't seem to really correlate to me expecting it to be on a Christian rock album.
Yeah.
But once I listened to it and figured out that it was in fact not a cover of George Michael's Faith, yeah, it's just like, it starts off like a pretty laid back ballad type deal. I do like the guitar tone and the little like light melody that the guitar is playing.
Yeah.
Then the bass and the light drums come in behind it. It slowly builds up until it gets back to the rock sound that you'd expect from this album a little bit after like the halfway point in the song, and then it fades back down. I like the lighter parts of this song more than I like the rock part of this song.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I feel like some of the more aggressive and involved parts of the song kind of feel like modern worship songs at some points, which is kind of strange. So I was interested to see if you had any hot takes on that.
I'm not gonna open too many cans of worms. Don't worry, Jeremy. But yeah, I definitely got some. What's that really popular modern worship, like Oceans or something?
Yeah.
Wait, like
yeah.
I can't remember. It's something with water. I think it's Oceans.
I think it is Oceans, and the only reason I think I've heard that song is because there's a video of a dude playing it on drums, and he just goes fucking wild on these electronic drums in church. I'm gonna send you the video after this. It's the greatest.
But yeah, like I definitely got that type of vibes, which I mean, even I say modern worship songs, I was hearing this type of stuff, like, because I will say I was confirmed into the Catholic Church way after I stopped believing, just because I didn't quite know how to.
Yeah,
I don't know, like
it was for more tradition and not wanting
Yeah.
to like kind of bother your parents too much about it.
Yeah, I didn't want to rock the boat. They just told me I was going to be confirmed, and I was like, I'm already in enough fucking hot water with you all. I'm just gonna do it.
Sure,
It's
whatever.
I was
Doesn't
like,
change the way I live, so whatever.
yeah. I mean, I was like 18 at the time. I think it was way late, and they sent me to a monastery for like I don't like 2 days. We had to stay overnight, and I brought like a pack of cigarettes, and there was some girl who just absolutely did not belong there, and I was just like, yep, this is okay. That's fine. I'll just stay here for 2 days and act like I'm learning anything.
Yeah. That's wild. Lyrically, even the lyrics I think are kind of cheesy, and this one it seems to just be like a kind of a cheesy love song about falling in love with her husband, and kind of maybe the doubts that come with wedding vows and promising and stuff. She says like, curses burning my tongue. I wonder if you're enough. I promised forever. Am I a liar? Love, oh, what have I done? Kind of a thing where she's clearly doubting and kind of feeling, but she's still falling in love with this person, presumably her husband, who I think did the guitars on this album.
I saw his name a whole bunch, so yeah. Josh Sturm.
Yeah.
He definitely did guitar on this song at least. So
Oh yeah, we have the technology. We can confirm those
yeah,
things.
his name is on there on Genius right next to the lyrics, and
Indeed.
it's also on a few other songs. So I'm guessing he just did the guitars on this album.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, just kind of a love song.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy. However, something that is crazy. This cover of Roxanne, track number 10. Roxanne.
Oh
I
my god.
really like this cover, and I think this cover is what sells me on this album again and
Oh.
again. I really love this cover.
Well, hell yeah. I like the original better,
Oof.
but
That's not an oof. That's totally valid and fair.
it's not a bad cover though. I will definitely say like it it adds enough that it's like okay, yeah. I think it does the original justice. I just like the original more. I
Yeah.
guess is how I'll leave it.
I feel like it takes it. She added a bridge to this
Yeah.
to the cover from the original song by the Police. To be clear, that we were talking about the Police song Roxanne, but yeah, I don't know. There's just the guitar tone on it. It's super reverby. It's a live track as well, which is kind of unexpected amidst the rest of this album being a very like clean studio album. And just the guitar tone, the reverb is nice and crispy. She has some like nice soft vocals that kind of build and build and build, and then she even goes into some screaming towards the end of the chorus, and it's just I don't know. I really like it. It's got some cool guitar solo stuff ending with some ambient noise, and I don't know. I like the soundscape of this track.
This is definitely a song I would not fault anybody for liking this
Well, you
more
better
than the
not fucking
original.
fault me. I'll kick you out of
Well,
the podcast.
there's just some like hard rock covers that I hear people talk about liking them more than the original,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, that's fucking gross, dude.
You're totally not talking about the zombie cover by Bad Wolf.
Yep, that's.
Ugh.
Oh my
I
god.
feel you. I feel you. There are a lot of generic covers that don't do enough. I feel like, for me personally, I enjoy covers that take the song to a new genre or to a new place lyrically, or just make it your own.
Yeah, like this one does because
Yeah.
I mean the original. It's in kind of like it's in the style of the Police, of course, because they
Yeah.
wrote the song. But I'm very partial to the kind of like ska reggae
Yeah.
rock that the Police
I
bring
need to
into
listen.
their
I need to
sound.
listen to the more of the Police. I do like their sound.
I'm not like a giant Police fan or anything, but every song I've ever heard by them, I'm like, yeah, I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I am. I haven't sought out a lot of their stuff, but I feel like in the context of this album lyrically, this kind of snaps back to this current timeline. So I'm trying to piece it all together here at the end, where like the hospital and the death tracks are kind of this potential future that Lacey is seeing for her friend, maybe, and the cheesy love song is kind of going back to the start of her friend's relationship with her husband or something. And it kind of made me think that maybe Lacey is taking on this role of like a spectator or a friend or like a guide or even an angel, to keep it in this kind of Christian context, that's witnessing her friend dealing with this stuff. So at the beginning of the timeline, her friend got married, she got verbally abused, she got physically abused, and that's kind of in the mid part of the album where all that stuff happens. They get into a fight, this divorce happens, and now we're here with Roxanne trying to make ends meet post breakup, kind of a thing,
Yeah.
turning to prostitution to feel loved and or to make money. And then Lacey added this bridge that kind of seems like she's coming to her friend. She's obviously trying to talk her friend out of the prostitution and whatever that she's getting herself into, and she's proposing God as a solution to that, so that she doesn't end up dead in a hospital, flatlining with her fate kind of unsecured.
I like it. That's a lot of thought. And I was trying to fit it into the album. And I figured there had to be a way. But I like your analysis.
Yeah. I think that it mostly just came from that bridge being like the bridge she added. She just repeats, "Don't try to pick up the pieces, just leave them where they lie. I'm gonna give you a new heart tonight." And to me that was like, okay, she's trying to save someone and bring them into Christianity. And then it kind of like, I'm not saying that what I described as this album's timeline is accurate. It's probably more personal for Lacey. I don't think Lacey's claiming herself as an angel trying to protect somebody else, but I think it makes it a more cohesive story that way from track to track.
Well, the next time I want to piece the story of an album together, I'll run to you to do that.
Thanks, and I'll run straight to the final track on this album. Run to you, track number 11.
Boom! Track 11. This one is another ballad to end off the album. I mean, I guess it's a ballad. That's what a ballad is. It's slower. It's got like a nice little acoustic picked melody that I actually like. And then it comes in with the big strums where it's like big acoustic chords, not like a giant sound or anything, but like like you feel like you're outside, somebody's playing guitar for you, and you're like, okay, this is nice.
Yeah, I think this track is in a good place for me because it kind of recaptures. Maybe this is an issue that I have that is benefiting this album, but it reminds me of some of the acoustic takes of songs from the first Flyleaf album that I've listened to a lot of, and it kind of takes me back to that place. So this inclusion at the end of the album was just kind of like it felt like a nod to kind of her earlier stuff. Obviously, any acoustic track she does is going to sound similar because it's her voice over acoustic guitar, and there's only so many ways you can make that sound. But it felt like it was kind of capping off the album in a way that's kind of harkening back to things that I already like from Lacey. So I think even though it is kind of generic, and that can be said for this whole album, even though it is kind of generic, I still find it comforting and I still enjoy listening to it because it feels like an extension of the first Flyleaf album, which I really, really enjoy.
Isn't it crazy how that works? Because I've noticed that with like albums that I've picked that, looking back on them, are 100% generic. Soilwork comes to mind.
Yeah.
But it's just
that
when you hear them, it's like just the context in which you hear it, the context you have for the artist or who it is, it can totally make what, upon further analysis, turns out to be at least somewhat generic. It makes it special, which, I mean, is why I try to never knock somebody for their music taste, because there's so much more to liking music that isn't really necessarily about the music itself.
Right.
Or at least
it's not as clear cut and objective.
Yeah. There is no objectivity in music.
Right.
I'm going to die on that hill. Fight me.
I mean, we are kind of forcing objectivity, right, by describing things and saying, I like this, I don't. I mean, I guess it's still technically subjective, but people in general rank things and they propose their subjective opinions as the objective fact, and that's just part of passion, being passionate about something. But yeah, it is a bad habit.
Well, this one, I mean, this song, okay, lyrically, we didn't even talk about the lyrics, man.
It's fine. We'll wrap this up quickly.
Okay. Yeah, the song, I just really quick, I got what I got out of it. It seems to be about loving someone who has left you and not letting that love go, which would kind of go in line, I guess, with your timeline, but I don't actually know that that's what the song's about. So,
yeah, I couldn't really fit this. I felt like this one didn't necessarily fit my narrative either, but yeah, I got the same vibes. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of depth to it. It's just kind of that simple, loving someone that has left you and remaining faithful to them after they've left, which maybe is not a great thing, but who's to say? I don't claim to understand the nuance and context of Lacey's life or this album or this song.
Love in general.
Or love in general. I don't love anything. What I do love, though, is Lacey's voice, her wavering, rough vocal performances. I'll listen to anything that she sings on. And yeah, it's mostly a fairly generic, inoffensive rock album, but I'm still here for it.
Well, I'm gonna go back and listen to Flyleaf after listening to this album. So
do it.
That's
I really like the first album. I can't wait for you to tell me it sucks.
Well, I can't wait for you to tell me that next week's album sucks, Jeremy.
What is next week's album, Joey?
So I don't actually. I've heard a small excerpt of this album and I thought it was interesting. So the album is called 1979. The artist is Deru, Deru. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's a stage name, so it's not his real name. But yeah, I heard a little bit of it the other day, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. So
we're using FeedbackLoop as an easy way to slip it in and find new shit together. I'm about it. I like doing things that we aren't familiar with, because then we kind of it's interesting because we don't have all of the luggage that we were just talking about. There's not necessarily this, oh, I like this album because it has grown with me, or because I have preconceived understandings of what to expect from this album, kind of a thing. It's just both of us coming in fresh and talking about how it made us feel in a week, which is fun.
Yeah, I said I wanted to do more of it in our our takeaway from 1 year of doing the podcast, and then I think I did one other album that I hadn't really listened to too much before, and so
I don't think I've done too many either, but
failed.
So don't feel bad.
Well, I failed all our listeners, Jeremy. I feel terrible.
It's okay. Ben will forgive us.
Shout out to Ben.
Shout out to Ben here at the end of the episode.
Ping us in Discord whenever you hear this.
Yes, do that. Tag us, do all that stuff. You guys, everyone that's not Ben, who's clearly listening to this, because we have more listeners than just Ben. Leave us some comments, send us some messages, share some love. There needs to be more love in the world. Send some our way. Send some to yourself.
Yeah.
This is us sending some love to you all. Take care of yourselves and stay in our feedback loop. Bye.